Hello everybody, this is Fiveum, back for Tangent Part 3 of 5. Continuing with the themes of last time, this is going to be downright crazy. Warning in advance, there's going to be a lot of misogynistic language, a lot of very inappropriate words, and a lot of really cool words that I'm actually going to have to look up. And well, I'm gonna just flip my shit and lose it a lot laughing. If you're expecting anything serious, please go watch any of my other videos that are not about Dave Sim. If you want to listen to the OG terminally online anti-feminist who was terminally online before the internet was too much of a thing, you've come to the right place. If you've come for something else, well, please stay anyway. It makes me feel good, gives me that dopamine rush. So does hitting that like and subscribe button. Oh yeah, and I don't know, send me money. I got the coffee, however you pronounce that thing. Gives me that dopamine rush, yo. Alright. See, you got my tangents printed out. Got my microphone, my computer, and my jug of apple cider. Listen to that jug. Alright. Never that good at burping. Oh well, let's get into it. Tangent 3. Leaving aside those males who, in the words of a cartoonist friend of mine, aren't women trapped inside men's bodies. They're just crazy. No one wants to be a woman. If prior to our life on this earth, we were presented with the option of being male or female, a short description of the functions of the male versus the female genitalia, with emphasis on menstruation, menstrual cramps, PMS, labor pains, yeast infections, et al., would most certainly result in so vast a number of us choosing the male equipment, what is this, a trick question? That it is difficult, if not impossible, to envision any woman being born into this world at all. To me, it seems less of a case of penis envy. Sigmund Freud, having lived in altogether too chivalrous a time period for such plain talk as I offer here, altogether too chivalrous, is one of vagina abhorrence. From the standpoint of the would-be tenant. Okay. From the standpoint of the would-be tenant in contemplating a role as owner-proprietor, alas, for reasons known only to our Creator, almost exactly half of us come out on the losing end of the coin toss. If things seem even-steven, leaving aside the fact that a penis self-evidently constitutes an anatomical presence, and a vagina self-evidently an anatomical absence, over the course of the first 10 or 11 years in the life of a boy and a girl, there does, alas, come the day. It would take a very hard-hearted individual, indeed, someone like myself, for instance, to find anything amusing in the level of mortification, the M in mortification is capitalized, at the sheer cosmic unfairness of it all, with which a young girl must greet the news that every 28 days or so, for decades upon decades, stretching as far into the future as a 10 or 11-year-old can possibly conceive, that a little friend will be coming to visit. A little friend who, it seems, will be just as catastrophic and humiliating a mess as the one who has, just now, paid a first, most unwelcome social call. No one wants to be a woman. Taxing the limits of my own not I have no doubt that had I a little friend who paid me such visits, in a desperate attempt to cling to what remained of my sanity in the aftershock of the full extent of the horrible news sinking in, I am certain that I would very quickly set about the business of manufacturing a fairy tale world for myself, in which I was, in all other regards, indistinguishable from a gender which does not. Leak. No one wants to be a woman. But to me, unless you have been forced by virtue of being a husband, caught between the rock of feminism and the hard place of your marriage, boomer humor, to hollow yourself out and believe is the B in believe is capitalized. Any number of impossible things before breakfast. The fact that no one wants to be a woman in no way validates entrenching the misapprehension, either in law or societal custom, that men and women are interchangeable. To do so, it seems to me, is to once again march in lockstep with the communist model of picking and choosing evidence for its ability to support a given hypothesis rather than framing a hypothesis from the best available evidence. And in case you forgot, his research mostly consisted of just talking to people, like just anecdotes of personal interviews, and then he blames women for being anecdotal creatures. And now the red baiting is always nice. Okay. To me, the best available evidence in terms of gender is that in the two-gender human human race between man and woman, and their respectively present and absent genitalia, with the arrival of the little friend in the feminine camp and with no analogous little friend arriving in the masculine camp, men take the gold medal and women, alas, take the silver. It seems to me that women have the option of saying, "We are the losers," or they can simply say, "We win the silver medal. The glass is half full or the glass is half empty." But whichever assessment seems to best reflect womankind's view of its unchangeable circumstance, gender interchangeability, looking as objectively as I can at the best available evidence, wonder what his evidence is, amounts to biological social climbing on the part of women, just as the attempt to make homosexuality and heterosexuality interchangeable amounts to societal social climbing on the part of homosexualists. Yeah. I'm honestly just so very confused. Like, he hates his marriage. He doesn't seem to like, men and women together or something, or about how it's terrible to be a woman. And he, wait, hang on, let me try to restart. Like earlier, he talks about being stuck between the rock of feminism and the hard place of a marriage, but at the same time, two men who are the superior sex dating each other, he doesn't like that either. This is like peak boomer bullshit, man. The urge deep within the female breast towards crowding the center is not limited to striving to make her gender interchangeable with the masculine gender, homosexualists interchangeable with heterosexualists. The idiosyncratic female view that everything is basically the same as everything else, that distinctions should not, do not, and do not, should not exist anywhere, that all discrimination, quote-unquote, is solely a pejorative, as Frank Miller adroitly pointed out at one time when he orders steak instead of hamburger in a restaurant, he is committing an act of discrimination. Also finds expression in their belief or feeling that children are, more or less, interchangeable with adults, and that they should be treated as such, that the imposition of any kind of discipline on a child by its father is simply patriarchal tyranny and abuse of power which can lead only to the child experiencing lifelong voodoo profession trauma. Hang on. Okay, so I'm honestly trying to weave together what he's saying. Oh God. Like he's saying that, okay, so men are better than women, and women, in an attempt to cope, try to say everything is the same as everything else, it doesn't really matter, or things are easily interchangeable, and this results in women, as well as feminists, and I guess weak men or something, trying to interchange homosexuality and heterosexuality, children and adults, and somehow communism comes from this. This guy had to join the John Birch Society or something. Okay. Children, like adults, have inalienable human rights goes the screw-loose approximation of female quote-unquote reasoning, and must therefore be allowed full license to pursue, with the imposition of as few external limitations as possible, what children perceive to be their own best interests. Okay, so is he saying that children... So wait, is he implying that children don't have an alienable right? Like children don't have rights? Is that an implication of what he's saying? Like before you turn 18, you're your parents' property or something? The end product of all this quote-unquote reasoning is on display in the food court of any given shopping mall in the soon-to-be completely uncivilized world on any given Saturday afternoon. New impossible thing to believe before breakfast. 15. Children must be allowed to raise themselves and determine for themselves what does and does not constitute ethical, responsible behavior. Okay, like, I understand there are children's rights movements, but, like, has anyone serious ever advocated for children raising themselves? Like, I know that there are various types of, free-range parenting movements or parents who might try, like, more hands-off approaches to raising their children. But I honestly am not aware of anyone who seriously advocates for letting children raise themselves and like they aren't, like, well, yeah, actually, no, I'm not, I was originally going to say, like, anyone's, any serious individual or any notable individual, but now that I think about it, just any individual in general. What is at issue, it seems to me, is the dichotomy which exists between the masculine and feminine interpretations of out of the mouths of babes. To a man, this aphorism implies that, although children are unshaped and incomplete beings until they reach the age of their majority, it is an interesting, naturally occurring phenomenon, apropos nothing, and even in the earliest stages of verbal communication, a child will, on rare occasions, voice an observational truth in defiance of all rules of logic, is actually germane and relevant to an adjacent conversation taking place on a much higher plane of sentient communication. Now that's a lot of $5 words right there. The feminine interpretation tends more in the direction of, because children are indeed from heaven, and are pure and untainted, and good and decent and true in all regards, full of pure love and joy and compassion and innocence. Their utterances likewise are pure and untainted, and good and decent and true in all regards, and the sooner we can set our hearts on a quest to find the purest and least minted and most decent 6-year-old in the world, and appoint him or her leader of the civilized world, and do whatever he or she tells us to do without question, the sooner we will arrive at the utopia which is always just there over the rainbow. Okay, I get it. Mothers love their children. They would do anything for their kids. But good luck finding mothers who really who want to be bossed around by kids, okay? It's not even like a spoiled child thing or a parent who has no control of their kids. It's like, he's basically saying that women want to be bossed around by kids. What the? I mean, in hindsight, it does make sense. I'm pretty sure that his wife had to deal with being bossed around by Dave for a long time, and Dave is pretty fucking childish. Well, he does have a very good vocabulary. Put another way, I think the prophet Isaiah's well-known prognostication, and a child shall lead them, is one to warm the hearts of dim-bulb women everywhere, and to chill the soul of every God-fearing man. It also seems to me that, with the feminist takeover of academia, and the media and feminist infiltration of the world's governing councils... So it also seems to me that, with the feminist takeover of academia, and the media and feminist infiltration of the world's governing councils. Okay, so the feminist takeover of academia and the media and Okay, so are the media and feminists infiltrating the world's governing councils? What the hell? God. We are probably a number of steps further along that particular yellow brick road as well, and probably a good deal further along than we were in Isaiah's 8th century BCE. I mean, especially because, the Yellow Brick Road wasn't a thing until, 1900s when L.F. Baum wrote that book. Pretty neat book. Very, very blunt. Compared to the movie, it also goes into, a lot of different, somewhat gorier details, about how the Tin Man was cursed by the Wicked Witch of the West to literally cut off all of his limbs one by one with the axe, and he got each of them replaced with tin one at a time. And actually, he goes into explaining that he was never able to get a replacement for his heart, and thus he could not feel the love he once felt towards his fiancée, and he wants to get a heart so that way he can feel that love again. Being a firm believer that statistics can be manipulated to support any argument, I tend to avoid them, except in those instances where the margin is so great as to imply, even with the greatest allowance for statistical error, that something ain't kosher in Milwaukee. The 95% of alimony and child support being paid by men to women being a good example. So, women are anecdotal. He's anecdotal. Also, you can't trust statistics. Make of that as you will, I guess. When it comes to the problems posed by feminists endeavoring to crowd the center by attempting to make children interchangeable with adults, I offer the statistic that one of the very few categories of crime which is increasing rather than decreasing in our society is that of youth crime, which is reportedly up by a whopping 35% over the period of 1990 to 1999. I'm not going to bother looking into that right now. I think myself safe in saying that this is a direct result of the implementation in our society of the feminist view that anything is better than having a father rear his child in the traditional way that worked for centuries upon centuries. Mother, with her idiosyncratic notions of love über alles, in charge of daily, minute-by-minute custodial care, and wait till your father gets home. Fathers in charge of the setting of boundaries and the imposition of discipline and of course corrections when an attempt is made to breach those boundaries. To the feminist, anyone is preferable to the father being in charge of a child's upbringing. Social workers, daycare supervisors, girlfriends, homosexualists, how-to books, Oprah Winfrey, the voodoo profession, the security guards, the mall, teachers, and even the child itself is more readily trusted than not-so-dear old dad. I mean, if it's the job of the dad to impose discipline, then wouldn't having two dads mean extra discipline or something? I'm just saying. He lists homosexualists, but wouldn't two dads be better than one? After all, it doesn't seem that... seriously, it really doesn't seem that Dave Sin trusts women to do anything? So, I figured he'd be totally down pat with, a child having two dads. I gotta take a break. Be back whenever I am. However, the way these things are edited, it'll seem almost instantaneously. Alright, I'm back. It's officially the next day for me, but for all of you listening, it's just about the, 18-minute and 30-second mark or so. I got my big jug of apple cider. Here, that jug. Jugify. Got my tangents. And I'm looking back at this thing. The more that I read these, the more I realize that I really can't fucking tell what the hell he's actually advocating for. He's advocating against everything, it seems. So I guess there's that. Guess he just hates everything. So when we last let off, he said that, women would prefer absolutely anything except a father being in charge of their kid, including but not limited to, daycare supervisors, how-to books, Oprah Winfrey, security guards at the mall, and my personal favorite, homosexualists. Apparently, having one dad is good, even though having one dad would imply having one mom, and women can't be trusted. But having two dads, no, that's also out of the question. This is the shit I mean when I say he seems to hate everything. Okay. In my view, women want too much to be loved unreservedly for them to be entrusted with setting a course for a child's development. coupled with their misbegotten female notion that the source of their own unhappiness has always been not being allowed to do exactly what they want, exactly when they want. They strive to create happiness in their children by letting their children do exactly what they want, exactly when they want. A recipe for disaster, of course, but then men with their long experience with the unfairer sex could tell them that you can't have both. Like, has this guy never run into a strict mother before? I mean, come on, strict mothers exist. If a father or a boyfriend or a husband lets his wife and or girlfriend do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, what he will get from her, far from unreserved love, will be willful condescension coupled with varying degrees of contempt. She will blame him that absolute freedom does not result in absolute happiness, and likewise do children. With no masculine discipline imposed upon them, no boundaries to be observed which can't be transgressed simply by willfully doing so, or by playing mother's heart on her sleeves. Emotion like a concert violin, the result is never absolute happiness, but rather a state more closely resembling absolute misery, and the mother as the source of that misery, and the father as duplicitous abdicator of his own authority, being treated with the aforementioned willful condescension and varying degrees of contempt. Ideology being an absolute in the feminist world, this causes yet another instance of selecting evidence to support the given hypothesis. Another impossible thing to believe before breakfast. Number 16. When one is loved unreservedly, one is treated with willful condescension and varying degrees of contempt. You know what? Wait, unreserved. I'm just going to double check, see what unreservedly means real fast. Okay, unreservedly, or unreserved.
Unreserved.
Alright. Not held back for a particular reason, giving without reservation, exhibiting no reserve. Huh. Alright, alright, so I guess you're not... Is that similar to unconditional or something? Or maybe it's slightly different? But one thing I want to... But you know what, even next to that, the thing that I find interesting is, among other things, it says ideology being an absolute in the feminist world. I really do have to ask, has anyone ever actually agreed with this dude's ideology? And not even like agree with his personal views. I mean, agree with the ideology that he is claiming that feminists believe in. Because this doesn't make any goddamn sense. Aren't men to blame for any of this? Well, yes, I think it would be impossible to underestimate the degree to which men are fully culpable for the rise in youth crime, especially through allowing feminists and the voodoo profession to persuade us that discipline, both physical and verbal, are old hat and part of a discredited patriarchal model. That discipline in any form is synonymous with abuse. To me, taking it as a given that reason cannot prevail in any argument with emotion, there must come a point, with women and children, where verbal discipline has to be asserted, and if verbal discipline proves insufficient, that physical discipline be introduced. Women and children have soft, cushy buttocks, which are, nonetheless, shot through with reasonably sensitive nerve endings. Okay, this dude clearly has a spanking fetish, just saying. Like, women and children have soft, cushy buttocks, which are nonetheless shot through with reasonably sensitive nerve endings. I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure he's the most sensitive ass dude I've ever read, but just say this lovely choice of words. Soft, cushy buttocks. I mean, oh, good God. I believe that those buttocks are there for a very specific purpose intended by their creator. Oh, God. Here's on that cider, man. Okay. That's some good cider. Please send me all your apple cider. I believe that those buttocks are there for a very specific purpose intended by their creator. There is no good reason that a man should not listen to misguided fairy tale vocalizations and unsound emotion-based twaddle and nonsense for however long it amuses or interests him to do so. For however long seems to him poetic and or chivalrous, standards will vary. Wait. There is no good reason that a man should not listen to. Okay, so there is good reason he should. Okay. So, however, when the point does arrive, when the amusement value has exhausted itself or good manners and chivalry have been stretched to their limit, that's enough, spoken firmly, distinctly, and above a conversational tone with women and children should be sufficient. If it proves insufficient, measured blows to the buttocks, measured to me meaning blows which cumulatively leave no mark, which endures longer than, say, an hour or two, but which will make sitting down an uncomfortable proposition for a comparable length of time, blows which are an inescapable consequence of failing to heed the verbal "that's enough" seems the only sensible way to evenly balance the unfair advantage emotion has over reason. This, to me, falls well short of actual physical abuse, but exists well within the upper registers of attention-getting devices for those women and children who have proven themselves to be of inadequate and or unfocused attentions. I'm just saying, the way he's basically saying that women and children... for a guy who complains about how the feminists and the homosexualists want to easily swap one thing for another because it doesn't really matter, he has no issue just swapping women and children, saying that they are worthy of the same discipline without taking into account any differences that a child and a full-grown woman would have. Of course, I don't expect consistency, but I just like to imagine that he somehow found this, that Dave Sim is listening because, let's be honest, this is Dave Sim, he probably would listen, and that he can hear me complain about this. Or rather, praise it. Praise this beautiful 50-page shitpost. Of course, in our present society, with its feminist-infected judiciary, any husband or father following this sensible course of action would very quickly run afoul of the voodoo profession and the law and find himself up on charges of common assault or domestic violence and, more likely as not, sentenced to IST-style re-education in the feminist way of doing things. In our feminist-infected, feminist-misdirected society, the husband or father really has only two courses of action open to him. A, capitulate to feminism, or B, leave. I think it's safe to say that women or feminists, having adopted impossible things to believe before breakfast numbers 15 and 16, collect them all, in place of verbal and physical discipline for their children, and in light of that 35% increase in youth crime, have demonstrated that they are incapable of either understanding or administering discipline. Slow-witted to the point of catatonia, as feminists have, time and again, proven themselves to be when their emotions tell them one thing, absolute freedom makes children happy, and when reason tells them another, children need firm, parentally imposed discipline, both verbal and physical, and I, as a feminist, am not capable of administering either. There is little hope that this situation will change anytime soon. I'm just going to have to say this again. Has any notable feminist ever advocated for letting children raise themselves? I mean, I know that there's a lot of feminist critique out there on, what was it called? Just the criticizing the methods used of raising children, but never really advocating for children to raise themselves. Well, I will say there is a lot of literature out there against, physical discipline or corporal punishment on children, but I wouldn't say that's exactly a feminist thing. That's more of its own little thing. All right. It is, as is always the case, foolish in the extreme for men to concede any philosophical territory to feminists. For exactly that reason, caught between what her emotions are telling her and what reason plainly indicates, a feminist is capable of vacillating for decades, if not centuries, before conceding any self-evident point. Vacillating. One second. Okay, I think I found it.
Vacillate.
Oh, it's vacillate. To be unable to choose between different courses of actions, options, or waver, to change between one state and another, to fluctuate, or to sway from one side. Okay. So, a feminist is capable of, waffling, or not being able to pick a side. Okay. Yes, I believe that men must shoulder more than their fair share of the blame for the sorry state of affairs in so many areas of our misguided feminist society. It is a natural mistake to assume that perception is perception. Wait. It is a natural mistake to assume that perception is perception. Okay. But that in no way mitigates the blame that must attach to men for so carelessly overlooking for so long the dichotomy between masculine and feminine perceptions. Oh god. Take, for example, the late Charles Schulz's wonderful comic strip Peanuts. We all love Peanuts, right? We were all reading the same strips, and we were all laughing at them. If anything was a shared enthusiasm of men and women, an example of gender interchangeability, it was that we all loved Peanuts, particularly in its heyday in the 60s and 70s. But it occurs to me that the masculine and feminine perceptions of the strip were very, very different. Men, I think, enjoyed the ridiculousness of it, the premise. A bunch of 6-year-old kids talking like adults. One of my favorite strips had Schroeder coming out to the pitcher's mound where Charlie Brown says something to him about how it's driving him crazy how badly the team is playing. And Schroeder says, "Man is born to trouble as the sparks fly upwards." Charlie Brown, of course, asks, "What?" And Linus comes out to the pitcher's mound and says, "It's from the book of Job. It means..." And suddenly all the kids are out at the pitcher's mound debating the book of Job, with Lucy, of course, grousing, "What about Job's wife? I don't think she gets enough credit." Job's wife, with her immortal advice as to how Job might escape his ordeal. Curse God and die. Okay. I'll have to say one thing about Job's wife. She was going through just about the same shit Job was. She lost her entire family and all of her stuff. It's made very clear that Job in particular is a uniquely pious individual. But at the same time, if somebody literally loses their entire family and as well as every physical possession they've ever had, I can't blame them for being mad. And you have to give Job credit for being particularly pious. All right. A nice balance. The ridiculousness of children talking about these adult concerns with a little low-grade technology into the bargain. But I think for women, this was evidence that finally at least one man gets it. Gets what? At least one man understands that children are adults, and we should be treating them as adults. How do you get to, no, seriously, how does he get to this conclusion? He just asserts it. He's the rational, unanecdotal man of masculine perception and truth. He should be able to explain how he got to this. The out of the mouths of babes thing. If we would just do what the children are telling us to do, we could have all the world's problems straightened out in a week and a half. Ah, you don't believe me. No, Dave, I think you've gone too far with this one. Give me one concrete example of feminists treating children as adults. Okay, finally, he's giving us a fucking example. Elian Gonzalez. To me, there is a clear and perfect example of feminism run amok in our society. There is an example where, for a period of many, many months, it was up in the air as to whether or not a 6-year-old, was or was not going to be granted the right to apply for political asylum. And who represented the yay side? You got it. Feminist social workers in the voodoo profession. I remember being moved to wonder if Dell Publishing had the opportunity to publish a children's big golden book of Marxist theory, or if Mattel had gotten the C&C version of Das Kapital into Toys R Us in time to make a useful contribution to the proceedings. And, wait a second. Okay, wait. Wait. Okay? I'm pulling up. I got his Wikipedia page right here. Alright? Long story short, what happened was, the young Elian Gonzalez, his mother, his siblings, and a bunch of other folks, they fled Cuba to the USA. However, their boat sunk. Most of the people died. Yet Elian himself was rescued by some fishermen who was turned over to the Coast Guard and then given to his paternal uncle in Miami. Elian's father had stayed back in Cuba, however, and demanded that his son be returned to him, and Elian's mother was dead, so she couldn't exactly claim rightful custody. Now, despite being with his great uncle, there was a lot of turmoil over whether or not, this literal 6-year-old could apply for asylum, especially considering he was a minor and his parents, his surviving parent, wanted him back. Now I just have to say, why the absolute fuck? Seriously, why the absolute fuck would Dave Sim look at quote-unquote feminists advocating that a kid be not returned to communist Cuba as an act of fucking communism? I mean, this isn't even mental gymnastics on par with the Olympics. No. This is like its own fucking level. I really don't know how fucking high you have to be like, they're trying to rescue a kid from communism. This is Marxism right there. And I know he's Canadian, but I'm American. And since I'm American, anything remotely left of center is fucking communism, okay? Welcome to America. Neoliberalism, communism, wokeism, communism. A company that, I don't know, puts a gay flag in its window. Literally Stalin 3.5. But I can't even make a joke about this. I'm just mad. Like a 6-year-old who was not going to be granted the right to apply for political asylum. Of course, he doesn't. He conveniently ignores the part from Cuba, which is a communist country, and I presume that Dave Sim would not be happy with it. But no. Okay. I mean, okay. One fun fact. The picture of Elian Gonzalez being, taken at gunpoint by federal agents is commonly used in a meme. I'll post the images on the screen or something. I'm just mad. Okay, I just gotta relax. Okay. I believe that every hollowed-out ventriloquist puppet husband from Bill Clinton on down who allowed such a travesty to proceed for longer than 9 or 10 minutes, yes, I think they are very much to blame and are wholly culpable for dramatically worsening the feminist mess in which we find ourselves. Which leads me to another example of feminist sloganeering. Child poverty and... Oh, God, fuck. That's it. Okay. I need to take a break. Alright, I'm back. However, due to editing, y'all lucky individuals haven't even noticed that I'm gone. Y'all lucky individuals. Alright. Gosh, I know what you mean. Before I was 10 years old, I doubt I ever grossed more than $100 a year. That's insane. There is no such thing as child poverty. Children are not poor, and children are not rich. There is no such thing as a white-collar child, and there is no such thing as a blue-collar child. Children do not file income tax returns. Children do not pay rent or arrange mortgages. And, I mean, if you want to get absolutely technical, which is very clearly the game he's playing, there would be no white or blue-collar children on the grounds that children don't have jobs. However, a child's lack of job status does not indicate the material or emotional wealth that their parents or guardian is able to provide for them. Well, wealth and other such resources. Still, I just gotta admire the very extreme technicality on the grounds that, kids don't really own their wealth. I mean, and again, what if, you're a child star who makes, $5 million a year because you're on some really popular TV show or something? It is legally your wealth, even if your parents are the ones who manage it. But, or heck, even if you got a trust fund or something. Like, you can't exactly access it, but it is legally yours or something like that. Does that make a child rich? We are back in the realm of 2 plus 2 does not, in fact, equal 5. The best evidence we have available would seem to indicate that 2 plus 2, in fact, equals 4 instead. You can debate the point if you wish, but I can scarcely imagine on what basis you intend to do so. So let me just reiterate for the benefit of the emotionally impaired. There is no such thing as child poverty. As a caring and compassionate society, we give to unwed mothers, unemployed mothers, unemployable mothers, unemployed ex-wife and mothers, and unemployable ex-wife or mothers gratis a completely and entirely unearned income, the amount of which, relative to 90% of the world's population, can only be conservatively estimated as being somewhere in the vicinity of mind-bogglingly indescribable wealth. And let me quite uncharitably point out that the decision to do so was made by men at a time when women were as rare as hen's teeth in the legislatures and governing councils of our civilization. You know, I legitimately do volunteer work with folks who are either homeless or at least near homeless, and there are a decent amount of unwed mothers with children who they really don't get much. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a Canadian thing. Maybe they get a lot of stuff in Canada. Not where I am. Maryland represent, I guess. We are, as men, perfectly aware that the vast majority of women are incapable of providing for themselves, let alone providing for their offspring. This is the underlying motivation in the development of welfare as we know it, and the use of discrete euphemisms like welfare and mother's allowances instead of, oh God, I forgot about this part. I am so sorry. I can't even laugh at this. Okay, instead of bovine charity and bimbo subsidies. Like, I mean, is this a kink thing or something? Like, was he secretly in a relationship with a woman and they just really enjoyed degrading each other? Or heck, maybe even she was just one of those folks who got a kick out of being degraded or something? I mean, honestly, if that's your kink, okay. I'm not going to judge you for it, but like, this is something that, I can't even laugh at it. I'm legitimately disturbed. Like, I'm just going to try to read it again, okay? This is the underlying motivation in the development of welfare as we know it, and the use of discrete euphemisms like welfare and mother's allowances, instead of bovine charity and bimbo subsidies. I break ranks with my own chivalrous gender. Okay. You know, only Dave Sim can literally refer to single mothers as bimbos and bovines, and then literally the next sentence talk about his quote-unquote chivalrous gender. I mean, maybe he's being sarcastic. It's really hard to tell. Normally, it's kind of easy to tell when he's being sarcastic. But in this case, maybe just me. I can just like feel the seething hatred just leaking out of the paper. Oh, that might be some extra apple cider. I mean, it's leaking out of the paper. Now that this is not apple cider. I break ranks with my own chivalrous gender to point out that when the loony left of Canada's own Political Action Committee on the Status of Women stages a protest on Parliament Hill as they did in the fall of 2000, demanding A, greater independence, and B, more social programs, they make themselves irretrievably ridiculous in the eyes of anyone capable of coherent thought. I mean, Okay, they can never be more ridiculous than you, Dave Sim, just saying. Feminists will always want more money from men, more money for unemployed and unemployable mothers, because men are, in the main, compassionate and charitable fellows collectively. Because men are, in the main, compassionate and charitable fellows collectively. Feminists tend always to get the money that they seek. If men are collectively too chivalrous, present narrator accepted, okay, at least he's able to acknowledge that, to point out the extent to which the whole sordid process undermines the feminist hallucination in toto, to point out, as an example, that equal pay for equal work of equal value is already the rule, as it has been the rule for centuries, that it is, in fact, the central reality of our largely free market economy, and it is only that women's work on the whole is of lesser value, as determined by that largely free market economy, whereby, for instance, the value of the work of a self-publishing cartoonist like myself is is established by the rule of that free market as being considerably less than that of many, many other cartoonists, and that of many, many other disciplines and professions. It might be hoped that women would reciprocate by being so good as to desist from attempting to propagate any further the delusion that children are poor. Children are not poor. You know, it is kind of interesting. He's just kind of unable, or at least unwilling, to even ask the question, why is it that we deem women's work as having less of a monetary value? And when I say women's work, you can't quite tell, but I'm using air quotes. It's, for lack of a better word, just jobs that we as a society associate as being for women. It's kind of like how, taking care of children or taking care of others is seen as quote-unquote feminine or women's work, and thus the market will just determine its value as having less monetary value. And likewise, the thing about the free market is, it is, for lack of a better word, a social construct. My general rule of thumb for a social construct is, if all humans disappeared, would it still exist? Of course, this is a bit of a simplistic way to put it, but in a free market, things are only worth as much as other people say they're worth. So one possible question to ask that Dave Sim conveniently refrains from asking is, why do we as a collective society in the marketplace value work that we associate with women as being less valuable than work we associate with men? I'm not going to answer that. I'm just saying that's one thing that Dave Sim does not answer, or does not even ask, rather. Children are children. A child's wealth is the depth and breadth of interest is valuable than work we associate. Discipline and time, not quality time, but quantity time, which is given to it by its parents with an eye to shaping it into a worthwhile adult. I'm sorry, did he just refer to... A child's wealth is the depth and breadth of interest and attention and caring and discipline and time, not quality time, but quantity time, which is given to it. I'm sorry, it's just weird to see a human child referred to as it. I mean, it's not grammatically incorrect, it's just a very awkward pronoun to use. Children are not poor, single mothers are not poor, people in Thailand are poor, people in Malaysia are poor, people in Iraq are poor, people in San Salvador are poor. As a single mother, you are merely less indescribably wealthy than you would like to be, which, considering that it was your own series of unwise choices which brought you to the situation in which you find yourself, seems somewhat less a cause for either hand-wringing anxiety or give till it hurts generosity, which you seem to always think are the only two appropriate reactions to yourself, and you are better off than 90% of the world's population circumstance. Yeah, it's Canada. It's very cold. You might not be able to, afford to heat your house in this Canadian weather. But hey, Did you know that 10,000 miles away, people have it worse? So as you literally freeze to death, just be happy that you're not 10,000 miles away right now. I mean, seriously, it's just this patronizing, condescending, popular elitist attitude this man has. It's really getting under my skin, I'm not gonna lie. And, he talks about your own series of unwise choices which brought you here. I mean, how the hell does he know that? For all he knows, for all we know, maybe a single mother had a loving husband who just tragically died in a car crash, and, it's very difficult to work and raise your 2 kids. It was clearly not her choice for her husband to suddenly die on her. But at the same time, Dave Sim just automatically assumes it. And like I said before, work that we associate with women is considered less valuable, so the labor that goes into raising children and creating, children that would be productive to society, no, we don't give that a monetary value. Dave Sim will wonder, and then Dave Sim wonders why child crime is up. Maybe it's because... I'm not even going to answer that. It's just this whole self-fulfilling prophecy. It's just this, child crime is up? Well, it's because of women, and we're giving women too much cool stuff. We need to take more of that stuff away, which will result in more children who have deprived material and emotional conditions, which will then cause more children to go into crime. But it's clearly not my fault. It must be those damn women. It's everyone else's fault but mine. Fucking Faye. I am a firm believer in the Islamic notion that the community has a right to a specific share of each individual's accumulated wealth, quite apart from whatever share is accounted for by taxes. There is no direct English translation for zakat, but that is roughly the concept behind it. Almsgiving is taxation to feed the hungry in your own geographic community. I donate to the food bank of the Waterloo region. But my belief in and adherence to the zakat in no way diminishes my revulsion at the feminist effort to make children interchangeable with adults, to describe children as either poor or rich with, in short, the feminist tactical effort to entrench this viewpoint in law so as to increase the unearned income of the unemployed and unemployable women by establishing a guaranteed income for each child, which incomes would, of course, become the property of the custodial parent. 3 guesses who that turns out to be. I'll admit I'm not the biggest expert on this. I know that laws will vary from place to place, although I do know that in the state of California, there are laws that specifically protect the income of child actors and such. Likewise, a parent might be allowed to manage income on behalf of their kids or that their kids own, but I do believe it is still legally or technically theirs, even if the parent has the right to manage it. If this is not sleazy, greedy, and underhanded long-term motive behind the misuse of the term child poverty by feminists in the industrialized countries, I apologize, but I think it's ridiculous to entertain the idea that feminists have any other tactical objective in mind. So, by describing... Okay, so Dave is annoyed that on a technicality that he's probably invented at this point, children are neither poor nor rich because it's their parents who actually own stuff. Okay. However, the fact that feminists are saying child poverty instead of a mouthful, something like children who live in impoverished conditions, that's not just a way to, make something just less of a mouthful to say. No, it's a deliberate ploy by the feminist, homosexualist Marxists. They want to destroy our language. They want to destroy our society. They want to destroy you. And this is their end goal. Hey, fucking Vay. It is another example of feminists crowding the center, attempting to make women interchangeable with men, homosexualists interchangeable with heterosexualists, and children interchangeable with adults, To me, it is nonsensical. It is an impossible thing to believe before breakfast, and yet increasingly it is the way we conduct our society. Yes, men are very much to blame. Take the minor hit movie which spawned a sequel or two. Look who's talking. Is there any more universal a masculine trait than to supply a comedic voice for a baby to narrate the unthinking and insensible gestures and expressions of a wholly unshaped and incomplete human being in the raw material state, and to give it a thinking, sensible, humorous, and ironic context far, far, far in excess of that being's actual aptitudes and abilities? And could there have been any more universal a mistake made by men in doing so? A harmless bit of fun? Perhaps. But then a man is always aware that a baby is a baby and an adult is an adult. It seems to me that men are culpable for missing completely and thoroughly, that the same cannot be said of a woman's awareness. In fact, with a woman as an emotion-based being, exactly the opposite is true. To a woman, a baby for all intents and purposes, as a being of self-evidently capable feeling of emotions, and capable of displaying emotions and vocalizing emotions, to a woman, in all ways which are vital or important or significant to a woman, a baby is interchangeable with an adult. So what a game, a harmless diversion, a source of entertainment to a man, merely reinforces a central and, to me, imbecilic female conceit. If women did not necessarily believe in context that the baby was actually saying and or thinking, you mind passing me that bottle there, Mac? All that did was reinforce for them that their perception of who was going on in that what was going on in that tiny cranium was the more accurate of the two. Daddy's being so silly. Reinforced for them that their own predisposition to believe that life begins with the first visible expression of emotion, and that once visible emotion and vocalized emotion exist in a human being, anything which is grafted onto that being later, intellect, reason, literacy, etc., is really just window dressing, at best secondary. At best secondary. That's the sentence. At best tangential. That's just a sentence. And reinforced for them that men, fathers, were and are frivolous individuals who perceive babies, and as a consequence everything else, inaccurately. Considering how dramatically limited the female intellect is, yes, I think that men are very much to blame for allowing a profound misapprehension like that to flourish in the female quote-unquote brain. You know, just to add insult to injury, it's open quote, brain, end quote, period. Fucker puts the period outside the fucking quotation mark. I sat through, God only knows how many hours of really strict English lessons in school, and just the fact that this guy continually puts the punctuation outside of the quotation marks really annoys me. And I'm thinking about that interview he did, and he talks about how he had a fan who wrote into him about how he knew that tangent was wrong, but he couldn't explain why, and honestly, I think I know where that fan was coming from, because a lot of this shit legitimately makes no sense. It's just, he just asserts this. And, okay, if you want to talk about your anecdotes, talk about your anecdotes, fine. Everyone's got anecdotes. People have some nice stories. And, of course, some people will inevitably come to terrible conclusions from these stories. However, he also attacks women and feminists for being anecdotal emotional creatures. So it's just like, I really need to know this. Where is he getting this information from? Is it just his own anecdotal emotional observations? Is it some sort of hardcore research? I mean, okay, in the first tangent, he made it very clear he just spoke with a bunch of women who happened to be near him at the time. I gotta say, poor ladies. This entire motherfucking tangent, I really don't know what the proper word to describe it is. This one's perhaps the most rage-inducing. And yet the fact that he's absolutely serious. All I can say is, it's really no fucking wonder his wife left him. This dude is just insane. Well, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my channel. I need at least 100 subscribers, so that way I can change my URL. My current URL is very ugly. I do not like it. Please subscribe. Also, please share these videos around, especially the tangents. I want absolutely everybody to be able to bask in these. Because, if anybody ever feels themselves almost getting sucked into that rabbit hole of anti-feminism, I want everyone to know where it started and where it fucking leads. Granted, when I say where it started, I can't really prove that Dave Sims started it. But let's be real here, alright? We got the red baiting, we got the misogyny, we got the nonsensical uses of logic, we then have the assertions that men are the logical ones and women are just emotional or illogical, and by proxy anyone who disagrees is some sort of emotional being incapable of rational thought. That is like just about any anti-SJW video. I mean, I know those were at their peak in 2016, 2015 or so, but come on, that general mindset way too prevalent on this godforsaken internet.
Hello, this is Fiveum, saying thank you for listening, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed it. If you can, please like and share it around, and if you're feeling especially generous, please subscribe. I need at least 100 subscribers to change my YouTube channel's URL, and my default is long and ugly, and I really don't like it. It would be extremely helpful for me if you subscribed. But you don't have to. I'm not your boss. I'm just Fiveum. And right now, I'm signing off.